The alien queen said, "Prove yourself tonight," and humanity's fate hung on his answer. The night was calm, and the world was sleeping under the blanket of silence, when a shadow crossed the sky. At first people thought it was a storm cloud or a meteor, but the shadow grew larger and stretched across the stars. Governments all over the world noticed it. Telescopes and satellites locked on it, and fear ran across the earth like fire. It was not a storm. It was not a meteor. It was a ship. An alien ship, silent and massive, floating above the planet with no warning. News spread like lightning. In every city, people gathered in front of screens, waiting for answers, waiting for hope. Military jets rose in the sky. Missiles stood ready, but no weapon was fired. The ship did not attack. It only waited, as if watching, as if judging. For the first time, humanity felt like a child under the gaze of something greater, something older, something unknown. Then, without a sound, the ship sent a signal. The signal was not for all leaders. It was not for generals or presidents. It was directed to one man. His name was Daniel. He was not the strongest soldier, not the most powerful politician. He was a young diplomat, known for his calm nature, his ability to listen when others shouted. Daniel never believed the fate of humanity would ever rest on his shoulders, but that night it did. Daniel sat alone in his small apartment when the signal reached him. His screen went black, and then it lit up with a face that was not human. A tall figure with pale skin, eyes glowing like silver moons, and a crown of dark bone upon her head. She looked at him without a word at first, and he felt the weight of her silence pressing into his chest. Finally, her lips moved, and her voice was cold yet filled with power. "Prove yourself tonight," she said. "Humanity's fate hangs on your answer." The words froze him. He wanted to speak, but his throat was dry. He wanted to run, but his body could not move. She did not shout. She did not threaten. But her words carried the weight of life and death. Daniel felt the blood in his veins turn heavy. He realized that every man, woman, and child on Earth was now tied to his response. In the streets below, people looked up at the sky where the alien ship floated. It blocked the stars, its silent frame glowing faintly with strange blue lines. Children cried and parents whispered prayers. Soldiers clenched their fists but dared not fire. Leaders called emergency meetings, but all waited for one thing: Daniel's decision. Daniel looked back at the Queen's image. "What do you want from me?" he finally asked, his voice shaking. Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time a faint curve touched her lips. Not a smile of kindness, but of challenge. "I want to see what humans truly are," she answered. "Your strength is not enough. Your weapons are not enough. Show me what lies inside you. Prove it, and your world will live. Fail, and your world will burn." With that, the screen turned black again, and Daniel sat in silence. His heart beat like drums in his ears. He did not know what kind of test awaited him. He did not know why the Queen had chosen him. All he knew was that the night would decide everything. As the clock moved closer to midnight, the ship above the earth opened like an eye. A beam of white light descended from its core, stretching down toward the ground. People screamed and pointed, unsure if it was destruction or salvation. The light touched the earth near the city where Daniel lived, and the ground shook. A path had been made, a door had been opened. Daniel felt his phone buzz. A message appeared, simple and cold: "Step into the light." He stood at his window, watching the beam of light that reached the heavens. His chest tightened. He knew the world was watching. He knew that if he refused, humanity would be judged as weak. If he accepted, he might not return. He closed his eyes for a moment and thought of his family, his friends, and the millions of strangers who did not even know his name. Their lives were now tied to his courage. The streets outside were filled with people staring at the light. Some shouted for him not to go, some begged him to save them, and some only stared in silence. He walked past them, his steps heavy, his hands trembling, yet in his heart something began to rise. Not anger, not fear, but a strange strength. When he reached the circle of light, he looked up at the sky. The alien ship loomed above, endless and dark. He took one deep breath, and then he stepped forward. The beam wrapped around him, warm and cold at the same time, and the earth fell away beneath his feet. The world watched as Daniel vanished into the light. The ship closed its gate, and silence fell again across the sky. The night had truly begun. The challenge had started. Daniel opened his eyes and found himself standing on a floor that did not look real. It was smooth, silver, like liquid metal, stretching out forever in all directions. Above him was no sky, Only darkness broken by moving lights like stars trapped in glass. The air was heavy and strange, thick enough that every breath burned his chest. For a moment he thought he was dreaming, but the beating of his heart reminded him it was not. From the shadows ahead she appeared, the alien queen. Taller than any human, her body covered in silver-black armor that seemed alive, moving with her breath. Her eyes glowed brighter here, and her voice echoed as if the room itself spoke with her. "You have come," she said. "Now you must prove yourself. Humanity's place in the stars depends on you." Daniel swallowed hard. His throat was dry, but he forced his words out. "What must I do?" The queen lifted one hand and the silver floor shifted. The ground opened like water, forming a circle around Daniel. From it rose three shapes, alien creatures unlike anything he had seen in books or films. Their skin was pale, their eyes hollow black, their mouths filled with rows of sharp teeth. Their bodies moved on more than two legs, bending in ways that broke the logic of human bones. "These are the hunters," the queen said calmly. "They are born to kill. You cannot match them in strength. You cannot match them in speed. Show me if you have something else." The creatures hissed, their bodies lowering to the ground. Daniel stepped back, his heart pounding like thunder. He had no weapons, no armor, nothing but his mind. His instincts screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to go. The circle around him glowed with light, closing him in. The queen wanted to see what he would do. The first creature lunged. Its legs struck the floor with a crack like breaking stone. Daniel dropped to the ground just in time, feeling its claws tear through the air where his chest had been. He rolled, scraping his hands on the smooth floor, his mind racing. He had to survive, but he could not win by fighting. Then he noticed something. When the creature leapt, the others waited. They did not attack together. They circled like wolves, but only one struck at a time. That was their rule, their nature. His heart slowed slightly. Maybe he could use that. The second hunter moved, charging with teeth wide open. Daniel grabbed a piece of broken shard that had fallen from the circle wall. It was sharp enough to cut his palm. As the creature came close, he threw the shard not at the body, but at its eyes. The shard struck one eye, and the beast screamed in rage. It did not fall, but it stumbled back, clawing at its own face. The queen's eyes narrowed. She said nothing, but Daniel felt her watching closer. The third creature came fast. Daniel had no shard left, nothing but his hands. He ran toward the wounded beast, forcing the charging one to collide with its injured brother. They smashed together with a crash that shook the floor. Daniel jumped aside, rolling again, his chest burning with pain. The queen raised her hand and the beasts froze. Their bodies vanished into smoke, leaving only Daniel standing in the circle, shaking, bleeding but alive. "You are weak," the queen said, "but you think. That is why you live. Remember this." Daniel tried to stand straight, but his knees trembled. His breath was broken and shallow. "Was that the test?" he asked. The queen tilted her head. "The first test," she answered. Then her hand rose again and the floor shifted. The silver ground opened to reveal a deep pit, and within it burned blue fire. A sound came from inside, not the sound of beasts, but the cries of a child. Daniel's eyes widened. A small figure was trapped inside the pit. It looked human, but its skin shimmered with light, its eyes bright like stars. It cried, reaching up, but the flames licked its body. "Save it," the queen said coldly. "Or save yourself, choose." Daniel froze. He could feel the heat of the fire even from where he stood. If he went down, he would die. The pit was too deep, the flames too strong. But if he did nothing, the child would burn. His heart pounded. He thought of the billions of humans waiting on Earth, watching him through their screens, not knowing what test he faced. If he ran from this, if he chose his life over the child, what would that say about humanity? He looked at the queen. Her silver eyes never blinked. She wanted to see what he valued. She wanted to see if humans were selfish or something more. Daniel's hands shook. He stepped closer to the pit. The heat stung his skin. Sweat rolled down his face, and every part of his body screamed at him to stop. He looked at the child again. Its eyes met his, filled with fear but also hope. Daniel took a deep breath. Then he jumped. The flames swallowed him, and the world turned to fire. The fire swallowed Daniel, and for a moment he thought his body would vanish into ash. His skin burned, his lungs screamed, and the heat crushed him like a giant hand. But then something changed. The flames bent around him, curling like waves avoiding a stone. His feet touched the ground inside the pit, and the child's cries filled his ears. Daniel staggered forward, feeling the heat yet still alive. He reached for the child whose small body flickered with strange light. Its skin glowed faintly like a star trapped in human form. When he touched the child, the flames pulled back, opening a path around them. The child clung to him, trembling but alive. Above, the queen watched in silence. Her silver eyes narrowed, and Daniel felt her gaze pressing into his bones. He lifted the child into his arms and carried it out of the pit. The flames closed behind them, leaving no trace of what had been there. The queen stepped closer, her long shadow stretching over him. "You chose sacrifice," she said. "Interesting." Daniel wanted to shout, to demand answers, but his breath was short. He looked at the child in his arms. It was not human. Its skin shimmered like liquid light, its eyes bright as small suns, but its face carried the same fear and innocence as any human child. "Who is this?" Daniel asked. The queen did not answer. Instead, the child dissolved into mist, fading into nothingness. Daniel's arms were suddenly empty. He gasped, stepping back in shock. "It was never real," the queen said coldly. "It was a shadow, a reflection of your own choice, and you chose to burn." Daniel's fists clenched. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me? From us?" The queen's gaze did not soften. "I want truth. I want to see if your kind deserves the stars." The floor shifted again. The silver ground turned into black stone, and the walls closed in until Daniel stood inside a long corridor. Shadows clung to the walls and whispers echoed all around him. Daniel stepped carefully. The corridor felt alive, the shadows moving like hands reaching for him. Then he heard voices. Not alien voices, but human voices. His father's voice came first. "You will fail, Daniel. You always fail." Then his mother's. "You were never strong enough." Then the voice of an old friend. "You should have run. You should have saved yourself." Daniel's chest tightened. The voices cut deep, reminding him of fears he had buried. His legs grew heavy, and for a moment he thought he could not move. The queen's voice whispered in his mind. "Every human carries shadows, fear, doubt, lies. Do you walk forward or do you break under them?" Daniel clenched his teeth and stepped ahead. The whispers grew louder. Faces appeared in the shadows. People he knew, people he loved, all telling him he was worthless, that humanity was weak, that surrender was easier. He covered his ears, but the voices sank into his heart. Finally, the corridor opened into a chamber. At its center stood a figure. Daniel's breath caught when he saw it. It was himself. Another Daniel stood there, the same face, the same eyes, but darker. His reflection smirked at him. "You cannot win," the shadow Daniel said. "You are only one man. You cannot carry the fate of billions. Humanity is selfish, broken, and afraid. Do you really think your choice matters?" Daniel shook his head. "You are not real," the shadow laughed. "I am more real than you. I am everything you try to hide, fear, weakness, doubt. Without me, you are nothing." The two Daniels circled each other. The queen's voice echoed from the walls. "Kill him or he kills you. Choose." Daniel froze. He had no weapon, no strength left, but the shadow moved like fire, striking at him with fists that carried more power than his own. Daniel fell to the ground, blood in his mouth. The shadow leaned close. "Give up. Humanity does not deserve survival. We are selfish creatures who destroy more than we build. Let me end this." Daniel's eyes blurred with pain. His hands touched the floor, searching for anything, any weapon, any chance. But there was nothing. Only his voice remained. He looked at his reflection and whispered, "Maybe you are right. Maybe humanity is broken. But broken does not mean worthless. Broken can still stand. Broken can still fight." The shadow froze for a moment, as if struck by the words. Daniel pushed himself up and threw his body into the shadow. They collided, struggling in the darkness. The whispers around them screamed louder until the chamber itself shook. Finally, the shadow burst into smoke, vanishing into the air. Daniel fell to his knees, gasping for breath. The queen stepped out of the darkness. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes shone brighter than before. "You faced your shadow," she said. "You did not run." "Few do." Daniel wiped the blood from his lips, his body trembling. "Was that the second test?" The queen did not answer directly. She raised her hand, and the chamber walls dissolved, revealing a vast view of stars outside. Her ship floated in silence, holding Earth below like a fragile jewel. "There are more shadows than you know," she said softly, almost to herself. "Even in me." Daniel's eyes narrowed. He caught something in her voice, and not only coldness, but something hidden. Pain. Regret. For a moment he saw her not only as a ruler but as someone carrying her own burden. But then her gaze hardened again. The night is not over. The true test waits ahead. Daniel looked at the stars, then back at the Queen. His body ached, his mind burned, but he stood tall. "Then show me," he said. The Queen's lips curved into a faint smile. Not cruel this time, but something darker. "Very well," she whispered. "Come and see." The chamber faded and darkness swallowed him once more. Darkness held Daniel like a sea with no end. For a moment he thought he had lost himself completely, drifting in endless black. But then light returned and he stood once more on solid ground. This time the place was different. The floor was rough stone, cracked and uneven, and the air carried the smell of smoke and ash. Above him was no ceiling, only a burning sky, red with fire. The Queen appeared again, her tall figure standing at the far end of the broken land. She looked at him as if she had been waiting. Her silver eyes reflected the fire above, making her seem both beautiful and terrifying at once. "This is the last trial," she said. Her voice carried no warmth, only judgment. "One choice, one decision. It will decide your world's future." Daniel steadied himself. His body still ached from the shadow fight. His mind felt torn, but he forced himself to focus. "What choice?" he asked. The ground shifted with a loud crack. From the earth rose two stone paths, stretching out before him like roads splitting at a crossroads. At the end of the first path he saw a small figure. It was the child again, the one he had saved from the flames. Its eyes glowed faintly, its hands reaching toward him. At the end of the second path he saw something else, a device tall and shining with alien symbols. It pulsed with energy, glowing brighter than any star. Even without touching it, Daniel understood its meaning. It was a weapon, one powerful enough to destroy Earth or to save it. The Queen's voice echoed across the burning sky. "You cannot choose both. Save the child or save your world. What is humanity to you, Daniel? A single life or billions?" Daniel's chest tightened. His eyes moved from the child to the weapon. The child stood helpless, waiting for him. The weapon waited too, silent but heavy with power. His heart pounded louder than the fire around him. He thought of his people, the cities and villages on Earth, the families waiting, afraid of the alien ship above them. One choice could protect them, but then his eyes returned to the child. It looked at him with silent trust, the same trust he had seen before in its glowing eyes. The Queen stepped closer, her armor glimmering like liquid metal. "Decide," she commanded. "You cannot delay. Every second you waste, the fire grows closer to your world." Daniel felt his legs weaken. His mind raced. If he chose the weapon, perhaps he could save Earth, but at the cost of leaving behind a child who depended on him. If he saved the child, Earth might be destroyed, billions of lives lost. He shouted into the burning sky, his voice breaking. "Why must I choose like this? Why test me this way?" The Queen's answer came cold and sharp. "Because life is choice, and leaders are judged not by their victories but by the lives they are willing to lose." Her words cut through him. He had never wanted to be a leader. He had never asked to carry the fate of his world, and yet here he was, standing at a crossroad where no answer felt right. The child's voice called softly now, faint as a whisper. "Please." Daniel's hands trembled. His vision blurred with tears, not from the heat, but from the weight of the decision. He walked forward, each step heavier than the last. He stopped halfway, staring at both paths. The fire roared above. The Queen's eyes locked on him, unblinking. The child reached out again, and the weapon glowed brighter, pulsing like a heart. Daniel closed his eyes. He thought of his family, his friends, the strangers who would never know his name but whose lives were tied to his choice. He thought of the child's eyes, filled with fear but also hope. Then he opened his eyes. His voice was steady now. "If humanity must live, it cannot be by abandoning the helpless. If survival means turning our backs on the innocent, then we are not worth saving." He turned toward the child and ran down the path. His legs burned, the fire licked his skin, but he kept running until he reached the child. He lifted it into his arms, shielding it against his chest. The weapon at the other path flashed once, then vanished into the flames. The ground shook violently, and Daniel thought it was the end. The fire exploded into the sky, swallowing everything. But then silence fell. The flames vanished. The stone paths dissolved and the world shifted again. Daniel found himself standing once more in the silver chamber, the child safe in his arms. The Queen stood before him, her face unreadable. For a long time she said nothing. Daniel's breath was heavy, sweat dripping down his face. The child still clung to him, trembling but alive. Finally, the Queen spoke. You chose the few over the many. You chose mercy over logic. You chose heart over survival. Do you think this makes you wise? Daniel met her eyes, his voice rough but firm. It makes me human. The Queen's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes, something hidden. She raised her hand and the child faded into mist once more, leaving Daniel empty-armed. The chamber shook, and for a moment he thought the ship itself would collapse. The Queen stepped closer, her tall shadow covering him. The night is ending, she said, and your answer has been given. Now you will see what it means for your world. Her voice was calm, but in her tone there was something Daniel had not heard before, a faint trace of doubt, a faint trace of sorrow. The chamber dissolved into darkness, and Daniel felt the weight of his choice pressing harder than ever. Daniel felt the darkness close around him once more, but this time it was heavier, like an ocean pressing against his skin. His chest tightened and his heartbeat slowed until he wondered if he was still alive. Then with a sudden burst of light, the shadows split apart, and he stood at the heart of the alien ship. The chamber was vast, larger than any stadium on Earth. Its walls curved upward like a hollow sphere, glowing with blue lines of energy. In the center stood the alien Queen, her figure tall and silent, her crown of bone gleaming under the strange light. Around her were hundreds of alien beings, their shapes tall and angular, their eyes glowing silver like hers. They were her people, the ones who had watched from the shadows. Now they looked at Daniel, as if his single breath carried the weight of judgment. The Queen raised her hand, and the chamber grew quiet. Her voice echoed, filling every corner. He has chosen. The human placed one fragile life above his entire world. He believes mercy is greater than logic. He believes heart is greater than survival. This is humanity. Her words hung in the air, heavy as stone. The aliens murmured in low, strange tones, their voices like distant thunder. Daniel stood with his fists clenched, his body trembling, but he forced himself to look at her without fear. You said you wanted truth, he said, his voice raw. That is truth. We are not perfect. We are not the strongest. But we care, even when it costs us everything. That is what makes us human. For a long time the Queen only stared at him. Her eyes burned like stars, but there was no cruelty in them now, only thought. The chamber shook as the ship adjusted its position, and Daniel felt the weight of Earth below, waiting in silence. Then the Queen stepped forward, her tall frame towering over him. She lowered her voice, but it still echoed with power. Do you know what I see in you, human? Weakness, yet also something I did not expect. I see a reflection of myself. Daniel blinked, confused. What do you mean? Her gaze turned distant, as if she were looking far beyond him, into a place only she could see. My people were once like yours, she said. We believed in mercy. We believed in protecting the helpless. But mercy cost us worlds. Mercy cost us empires. We hardened our hearts until nothing remained but survival. For centuries I believed it was the only way. Her silver eyes locked back onto him. And then you stood before me, choosing as we once did. It is foolish. It is dangerous, but it is alive. The aliens around the chamber shifted, their glowing eyes fixed on their Queen. She lifted her arms and silence fell again. The test is ended, she declared, and humanity's fate is decided. Daniel's chest tightened. He braced himself for her judgment, for the words that could end his world in fire. But the Queen's voice changed. It was still strong, but softer, almost weary. Humanity will live. The words echoed like thunder across the chamber. The aliens stirred, some in shock, some in anger, but none dared speak against her. Daniel staggered back, his knees almost giving way. Relief hit him so hard he could hardly breathe. You mean it? He whispered. The Queen nodded slowly. Yes. You have proved that your kind is dangerous in its own way. Not because of weapons, not because of strength, but because of the choice to protect the fragile even when it means death. That is a strength we abandoned long ago. Perhaps it is a strength we must remember. Her words sank into Daniel's mind, heavier than any victory. He realized she had not only been testing him, she had been testing herself. The Queen stepped closer, her towering frame casting a long shadow over him. Return to your world, she said. Tell them they have been spared. But remember, human, mercy is both a gift and a curse. One day it may save you. One day it may destroy you. She turned and the chamber's light flared. A beam of white energy opened, reaching down toward Earth. Daniel felt the pull, the strange warmth wrapping around him once more. He looked at the Queen one last time. Her face was unreadable, but in her eyes he thought he saw something fragile, something hidden. Sorrow, and perhaps a trace of hope. The beam carried him away, and the chamber faded from his sight. He fell through light and shadow until the ground returned beneath his feet. He stood once more in the streets of his city, the night air cold and real against his skin. Above him the alien ship moved slowly, its massive form shifting away from Earth. The people around him stared, silent and wide-eyed as the vessel turned, its blue lights dimming until it disappeared into the stars. The world erupted in cries and cheers. Families hugged, soldiers dropped their weapons, children laughed and wept. Earth had survived. Humanity had been spared. But Daniel did not join in the celebration. He stood still, his heart heavy. He remembered the Queen's words, the fire in her eyes, the sorrow hidden in her voice. Humanity had been judged worthy today. But tomorrow was uncertain, he whispered to himself, words no one else could hear. We survived, but now we must prove we deserve it. The sky above was quiet, the stars shining once more. Yet for Daniel, they no longer looked the same. They were no longer distant lights. They were doors. And behind those doors waited rulers, trials, and truths he could not yet imagine. The night had ended, but humanity's story had only begun.